توی کوچه رقصیدن برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن برای خواهرم.
This is their modus operandi of intimidating and killing their opposition wherever they can find them.
It has even spread its tentacles right here in Canada.
Down with dictator!
Canada is not safe. That's heartbreaking.
One solution, revolution!
Islamic Republic's agents are everywhere in this country, everywhere.
Hamed Esmailioun has learned in the most tragic way possible that he always has to watch his back.
If you're on the air in a plane, or if you're on the ground, the dictatorship regimes, they can endanger your life.
Shahriyar Ferdowsiye.
January 8th, 2020, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps shot down Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 with 2 surface-to-air missiles. 176 people were killed, including 55 Canadians. Among them, Hamed's beloved wife Parisa and 9-year-old daughter Rira.
In this country, victims of Islamic Republic are buried. When I come here and I am by myself, I'd get paralyzed for a day.
He channeled his grief into action, demanding answers, calling for a full investigation.
Canada must stand for justice.
It wasn't long before Hamed's public outcry put his life in danger too. It's not safe in Canada or anywhere in the world for enemies of the Iranian regime.
How many Islamic Republic officials are enjoying freedom in Canada? You will be shocked.
Masih Alinejad has been trying to take down the regime for more than a decade.
Woman, life, freedom. Zan, zandagi, azadi.
The fearless Iranian-American journalist is one of the biggest supporters of the Woman Life Freedom movement that rocked Iran in September of last year.
If we became a rebel, that's how we will win the battle.
Protesters across the country filled the streets when 22-year-old Mahsa Amini was beaten to death by police.
We, the people of Iran, we are brave enough to bring democracy for ourselves.
Massey's voice forced the world to pay attention to the regime's violent suppression of women and girls. That made the petite but fiery activist public enemy number 1. She wears it as a badge of honor, but her courage comes at a price.
You won't have a normal life. I cannot go back to my own country. I haven't hugged my family for 13 years.
The FBI says it thwarted an attempt to kidnap her in 2021, and the following year, an assassination plot. This suspect caught on surveillance video outside Massey's door. A loaded AK-47 later found in his car. The FBI linked both to the Iranian regime.
But their plot was disrupted, and all of the defendants will now stand trial in the United States for their alleged crimes.
Massey lives in New York, going from one safe house to the next, with full protection from the FBI. As dangerous as it is for her in the United States, Massey revealed to us the danger to dissidents is even worse here in Canada.
The FBI told me that the same group who were trying to kidnap me on US soil, that were the same group from Revolutionary Guards in Iran trying to harass, kidnap, and kill Canadians.
Massey says the FBI knows how bad the problem is.
FBI told me that as far as you are in America, we will protect you. But we suggest you not to go to Canada. It won't be safe for you. That's heartbreaking. Canada should be safe.
Thank you for inviting me to testify.
American security expert Gabriel Nerona served as special advisor on Iran to the U.S. State Department from 2019 to 2021.
What I constantly hear from Iranian Americans, they say the problem in Canada is far, far worse than you could imagine.
The FBI told Massey if she insisted on going to Canada, they'd need months to prepare.
That sounds like if she were going to Turkey or Iraq, it shouldn't be the case that when you're going to Canada, that you have to spend months in advance making sure that you're going to be safe.
Massey says those who are threatened here are left out in the cold, without the kind of security she gets.
None of them were under protection of the police in Canada. They sent death threats to Hamed and many other activists. Why? Because they don't see any consequence. They don't see any punishment.
I had a conversation with RCMP officers, and I said, if you have any recommendation for me, because I see the threats are going on, especially on social media. They said to me that they have no resources. They're busy with Ukraine, Russia, other things, China. If something happens to me, nobody can help me. So you feel helpless.
Never were Hamed's fears better demonstrated than in early August, when this man came to Canada. His name is Sayed Hassan Qazizadeh Hashemi. He was a senior member of the same Iranian administration responsible for killing Hamed's family and 53 other Canadians. The worst part is we would have likely never found out had it not been for Iranians spotting him in the background of a TV news report on Quebec tourism.
It was outrageous for the whole community.
Hamed saw that footage on social media. He couldn't believe it and called out the Canadian government. This all happened only months after we first spoke with him. We talked to him about it later in Vancouver at the screening of a film about the tragedy of Flight 752.
He was not an ordinary person. You see that he had a photo with Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization in this country.
In response to Hamed's calls to have him deported, Hashemi reportedly fired back with a threat. He was quoted in this Iranian magazine saying, "I will retaliate against the treachery of the foreign media outlets and Hamed Esmailion."
Made me angry, actually. That why? He's here and he threatens everybody he wants.
In late August, Canada's immigration minister finally weighed in. Mark Miller tweeted that Hashemi's application for temporary residence was denied and that he was being barred for 3 years due to, quote, Iran's disregard for human rights.
That's a totally unserious response. 3 years? In 3 years, he can go vacation to the rest of Europe and then come back to Canada, an unchanged man. This person should be permanently blocked, and every other Iranian official like him should be permanently blocked.
Even an immigration lawyer like Ramin Jubin can't figure out how Hashemi was allowed to enter in the first place.
It boggles my mind, too, how that individual got into Canada. I don't know. It's just a slap in the face of the community here.
And they engage in intimidation and threats and money laundering?
The issue is so rampant, Ramin has formed a group of lawyers working to identify and investigate those with close ties to the regime living here.
The main categories: embezzlement, money laundering, threat. We have about 700 names right now that are either have temporary residence, permanent residence, or citizenship that are in Canada and that are somehow regime affiliates.
700.
About 700 names. We're still counting, so it's going to be closer to 1,000.
Describe to me what some of the biggest things that you're seeing on your list and why this is so concerning.
Impunity. Impunity to operate in Canada, engaging in financial and violent crimes. The most violent individuals I can imagine, it's just go and grab women's hair and throw them in the curb. These individuals are allowed to live in Canada. They will not be prosecuted. That's just a fact.
Ramin says many of the regime-connected insiders come with millions of dollars. Often they are involved in financial fraud or large-scale government corruption, and they settle in wealthy neighborhoods in Canada.
Some of them have citizenship. They've had citizenship for a long time. And they knew, okay, once I embezzle, I can go to Canada and live a lavish life in West Vancouver or wherever. And some of them had this pre-planned already, and they came to Canada knowing that this is going to be their safe haven. And it affects everyone. It's in our own neighborhoods. It's all over Canada.
The British Properties, known as Canada's Beverly Hills, is one of the country's most expensive postal codes. Kamran Malikpour says there are many people living here and across Metro Vancouver with close ties to the Iranian regime.
If I give you by numbers, I have more than 300 properties that I know I have documents belongs to the families or the persons who are related, who had a position in the Iran government.
300
Yes.
confirmed properties?
Yes.
300?
Yes.
You're kidding?
No, well, I could show you 50 right now in 1 hour.
Kamran was a journalist in Iran who came to Canada in 2012. He says the number of regime affiliates in Canada is so large, exposing them has become his sole focus. And that work has put him in danger. In September, a top Iranian official leveled a threat against Iran International, the news outlet Kamran works for.
The Iran intelligence minister himself told that Iran International is a terroristic organization, and because of that, we have this right to attack them anywhere, in any country, anytime.
Anywhere, anytime.
Anywhere, anytime. Every day when I go out from home, I have this feeling maybe this is the last day I'm leaving the home.
We, for the past 20 years, have been telling the government that this is going to become a very serious problem.
Payam Akhavan says the time has come to confront this threat.
Not just within Iran, but it has even spread its tentacles right here in Canada.
The Iranian-Canadian is one of the world's most distinguished human rights lawyers. Through his work at the International Criminal Court, he's been a witness to some of the most notorious war crimes in modern history.
I have had the opportunity to work on behalf of survivors of genocide in Bosnia, in Rwanda, and many other places in the world. But of course, my own home back in Iran remains a very special place in my consciousness, and I have a special sense of responsibility.
He also has a special sense of outrage about the lack of accountability here.
It's really disturbing to see now that those same elites that are responsible for so much evil and so much suffering are enjoying their ill-gotten wealth in Canada with impunity, and they are establishing networks of influence. They're even vilifying and intimidating and threatening those who have escaped the Islamic Republic so that they could have a life of safety and freedom in Canada.
As a lawyer and an advisor to the Canadian government on the investigation into Flight 752, Payam chooses his words carefully. But on the danger to this country, he doesn't hold back.
We should not be naive enough to believe that the day would not come when they would decide to assassinate people here in Canada if it was in their interest to do so. That is the modus operandi of this regime. Intimidation, threats, and violence. Yes, violence including beyond the borders of Iran.
U.S. security expert Gabriel Nerona agrees. He says the Islamic Republic has proven over and over again it will kill its critics anywhere in the world.
The regime has conducted over 360 terror assassinations in its 44-year history. Speaking for the United States, there are active plots around at least a dozen Americans. The United Kingdom has threats against 15 of its citizens. I have no doubt that there are active and significant threats against Canadians today.
No forgive, no forget! No forgive, no forget!
Payam says there are some promising developments. Canada has expanded sanctions against some regime officials in Iran and amended legislation to allow police to seize assets of those implicated in human rights abuses and corruption.
The moment that the government seizes the first assets of these individuals, many of them will pack their bags and go.
But it's not just about enforcing laws. Immigration lawyer Ramin Jubin says Canada needs to go much further.
It's a lot of words, not enough action.
The United States declared Iran's notorious Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps a terrorist group in 2019. The powerful paramilitary organization reports only to the supreme leader. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has publicly acknowledged they are a big problem.
We will be working with all the tools at our disposal to make sure that Canada is never again a haven for killers, murderers, and those responsible for the repression of Iranian people.
The government has designated some IRGC group members as inadmissible. Despite the Prime Minister's tough talk, the organization as a whole still hasn't been added to Canada's terror list.
It's a terrorist organization. It's good that people know about that more and more. That's great. But if it's a terrorist organization, where's the action? Why are they not on the terrorist list?
The Prime Minister has resisted calls to list the IRGC as a terrorist group because some Iranians are forced into the organization as part of their mandatory military service. But Ramin says Canada is able to identify low-level conscripts who served against their will and make exceptions. He says the terrorist designation gives the justice system much more ammunition.
If you take action in one side and you keep silent on the other side, then you are hypocrites.
During an appearance at Canada's Parliament in 2019, Masih Ali-Nejad pleaded with the government to take stronger action.
So you see, killing, taking hostage, murdering, executing is in the DNA of the Islamic Republic. So maybe you think that this is some problem with Iranians, let them deal with it. It's not. Islamic Republic is a threat to Canadians.
And Gabriel says that threat is worse in Canada than almost anywhere else in the world.
If we allow complacency to happen, then the smoking gun will be a dead body of an Iranian-Canadian, and that is not acceptable.
This is really scary that I see terrorist regime can freely send the killers on US soil, can get visa to go to Canada, and spy on dissidents. This is scary.
The question is, are authorities taking that problem seriously? In Canada, unfortunately, the answer appears to be no.
My wife, my only child, along with 174 other innocent human beings and an unborn child, were murdered in cold blood.
Ahmed has already lost the most important people in his life.
When we moved to Canada, we thought that we are safe. And we lived thousands of kilometers away from Iran. But where's my wife and my daughter now?
So he's dedicating the rest of his life to one thing, making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else.
We are immigrants. We are people that we came to this country and we were welcomed by people of this country. And we want them to be safe. We want everybody to be safe, and it's not.